Here is something most people refuse to admit about themselves. The more you speak, the less people hear you. The more you explain, the less they believe you. The more you chase, the less you are wanted. And the more you give of yourself, freely, constantly without restraint, the faster your value collapses in the eyes of the people around you. This is not a motivational opinion. This is how human psychology actually operates. We live in a culture that rewards volume. Talk more, post more, share more, broadcast your thoughts, your ambitions, your pain, your opinions, as loudly and as frequently as possible. And so most people do exactly that. They perform. They explain themselves constantly. They chase approval like oxygen. And they wonder, quietly, in their lowest moments, why no one seems to take them seriously. The answer is not that they need to work harder. The answer is that they have made themselves too available, too transparent, too easy to read. They have violated one of the oldest and most unforgiving laws of human nature. Scarcity commands value. Abundance destroys it. What follows is not advice. It is a diagnosis, and if you are honest with yourself, you will recognize your own behavior somewhere in these pages. And you will never see it the same way again. Think about the people in your life who receive the most respect. Not the ones who are the loudest. Not the ones who share the most. The ones who are measured. Who seem to hold something back. Who don't rush to fill every silence. Don't justify every decision. And don't need you to agree with them to feel solid. Now think about the people who are taken for granted. They are, almost universally, the most available ones. The ones who respond instantly. Who never say no, who bend their schedule, their preferences, their standards, to accommodate everyone else. They are generous, often deeply so, and they are quietly undervalued for it. This is not an accident of cruelty. It is the mechanical result of a psychological law that operates without conscience. When something is always there, the mind stops registering it as valuable. Water is more essential to human survival than diamonds. You cannot live 3 days without it. And yet a glass of water costs almost nothing, while a diamond commands a fortune. Why? Because one is everywhere and one is not. Human psychology does not price things by their objective worth. It prices them by their perceived scarcity. Most people never realize that they are pricing themselves like water, endlessly available, endlessly accommodating, and then feel confused when the world treats them accordingly. They give their time freely and watch it be wasted. They offer their opinions constantly and watch them be ignored. They make themselves easy to reach and find that no one values the access. The problem is not that they are giving too little. The problem is that they have never learned to withhold. Section 3. The psychology of scarcity: strategic, analytical, more detached. The luxury industry understood something about human nature centuries before psychologists gave it a name. Consider how the great fashion houses of Europe positioned themselves in the 20th century. They did not compete on price. They did not try to reach the widest possible audience. They did the opposite. They raised prices. They limited production. They cultivated waiting lists. They made customers feel that access to their products was something to be earned, a privilege, not a transaction. The result: the less available they made themselves, the more desperately they were pursued. This is not manipulation. It is an accurate reading of how desire is constructed in the human mind. We are not rational evaluators of worth. We are creatures of context. And the context that activates desire most reliably is the possibility of not having something. The fear of loss, of exclusion, of missing access. This is what makes the mind assign elevated value. Now, apply this not to handbags or watches, but to yourself, your time, your attention, your presence in a room, in a relationship, in a conversation. These are not infinite resources. They have a natural limit. But most people behave as if they don't, spreading themselves across every request, every invitation, every person who asks something of them. And in doing so, they teach the people around them something damaging, that there is always more where that came from. The truth is, the moment you start treating your own presence as something scarce, something that must be deserved before it is given. The people around you will begin to treat it that way too. You do not need to be cold. You do not need to be cruel. You simply need to stop being everywhere. There is a particular hunger that drives most people's social behavior, and almost no one wants to name it directly. It is the need for approval, the need to be liked, accepted, agreed with. To have other people reflect back a version of you that feels safe and valued. This need is not a weakness in the clinical sense. It is biological. Social approval, for most of human history, was tied directly to survival. The tribe that rejected you was a death sentence. The brain that learned to crave belonging and fear rejection was the brain that lived. But here is where history becomes a trap. In a world where social rejection no longer means physical death, the approval-seeking drive has become unmoored from its purpose. It now operates in a context where it actively destroys status rather than building it. Because here is what approval-seeking communicates. At the level of social signaling, beneath the words, beneath the smile, it communicates need. And need is weakness. And weakness, in the hierarchy of human perception, invites diminishment. Watch how a person changes the moment they begin chasing your approval. Watch how the dynamic shifts. The moment someone says, in 100 different ways, "Do you like me? Am I enough? Please validate this decision I've made," the power in that relationship transfers. It moves toward whoever is being asked, and once that transfer happens, it is very difficult to reverse. The highest status people in any room are almost never the most eager for validation. They hold their positions precisely because they appear not to need it. They speak when they have something to say. They disagree without apologizing for disagreeing. They hold eye contact without filling every silence. They have learned, or perhaps simply arrived at, through suffering, the most liberating realization in social psychology. Other people's opinion of you is their problem, not yours. And when you truly internalize that, your entire posture changes. The way you enter a room changes. The way you hold silence changes. You stop performing. And in the absence of performance, something more powerful emerges: presence. History does not record the men and women who were always available. It records the ones who were difficult to reach. There is a pattern you find across powerful figures throughout history, across generals, rulers, negotiators, artists at the height of their influence. They understood, instinctively or by design, that distance is not merely a logistical reality. It is a strategic instrument. When you are always present, always reachable, always willing to appear, you normalize yourself. You become furniture. People stop seeing you because you are always in the background. But when you withdraw, when you become selectively visible, something shifts in the people around you. The mind, confronted with absence, fills the vacuum with projection, with curiosity, with desire, with the nagging, uncomfortable sense that they may be missing something important. This is why the most effective negotiators in any field, whether in politics, in business, in personal relationships, understand the power of the strategic pause, the unreturned call, the delayed response, not as games, not as childish manipulation, but as a signal. I am not waiting. I am busy with something more important. You are not the center of my world. That signal does something to the other person. It recalibrates their sense of your value. It makes them wonder. And wonder, in human social dynamics, is the beginning of respect. The paradox is this: the more freely you give your presence, the less it is valued. The more you protect it, the more people want access to it. You do not become important by being everywhere. You become important by being somewhere, and making that somewhere feel rare. The ancient Stoics understood something that modern culture has nearly forgotten. Your emotions, unguarded, are a liability. Not because feeling is weakness, but because displaying feeling at the wrong moment hands others an instrument of control. The moment someone sees that their words can disturb you, that their approval can elevate you, that their rejection can wound you, they have leverage. And leverage, once discovered, tends to be used. Marcus Aurelius, commanding an empire, wrote not speeches for crowds but private meditations for himself. He was not performing, he was training, reinforcing again and again the discipline of responding to the world rather than reacting to it. A reaction is reflexive. It is fast, emotional, unfiltered. It gives information. It shows the shape of your fears and your desires. And in any social or professional environment, information freely given is power freely transferred. A response is chosen. It arrives after a pause, however brief, in which the rational mind re-engages. It is measured. It is deliberate. And it gives almost nothing away. Think about the last time someone provoked you. A dismissal, an insult, an unfair criticism, and you reacted immediately. Think about what that reaction cost you, not in argument, in status, in the eyes of everyone who watched. Now think about what it would have looked like if you had simply paused, said less. Let the silence carry the weight of your displeasure, without the undignified spectacle of losing composure. The person who cannot be rattled is far more dangerous than the person who explodes. Explosions are predictable. Stillness is not. And it is the unpredictable, the unreadable, the person whose inner state you cannot access. That person commands a subtle, persistent form of fear that is indistinguishable from deep respect. Emotional detachment is not numbness. It is sovereignty over your own reactions. And that sovereignty, practiced consistently, becomes one of the most visible and unmistakable signals of genuine power. At some point in your life, you were told directly or by example that saying no is selfish, that accommodation is virtue, that putting others first is the mark of good character, and that belief, however well-intentioned its origins, has cost you. The truth is that every time you say yes when you mean no, you are not being generous. You are conducting a transaction in which you trade a piece of your self-respect for a moment of social comfort. And the price compounds. Say yes enough times against your own better judgment, and people stop asking for permission. They begin to assume it. No is not a rejection. No is a declaration of self-possession. Think about how you perceive the people in your life who hold firm limits. The colleague who will not take on extra work that isn't theirs. The friend who leaves when the evening goes too long. The partner who holds their values without apology. These people may sometimes frustrate you in the moment, but there is something else you feel toward them, something more durable. You take them seriously. You don't push past them without thought. You bring your better behavior into their presence because you have learned that there are consequences for bringing your worst. That is the function of a boundary, properly held, not to punish, but to educate others on how to engage with you. To establish the terms of your own world. Most people spend their entire lives waiting for others to respect their time, their energy, their dignity, without ever communicating, through firm and repeated behavior, that those things have a price of entry. The ones who understand this, who practice it without apology and without drama, discover something remarkable. The people worth keeping in their lives don't leave. They adjust. They rise to meet the standard. And the ones who leave, because you stopped being infinitely accommodating. They were never respecting you. They were simply using you without resistance. There is a reason that the most exclusive restaurants in the world do not advertise. There is a reason that the most coveted private clubs in history have never had a sign on the door. There is a reason that the most powerful figures in any industry cultivate mystique rather than visibility. Exclusivity is not snobbery. It is a statement of value, made not in words, but in behavior. Consider how the most storied auction houses in the world conduct their sales. They do not attempt to make everything available to everyone. They curate, they select, they determine, long before the doors open, who gets access and on what terms. And that curation, that deliberate act of choosing who enters and who does not, is precisely what makes being inside the room feel meaningful. Now consider how you move through your own life. Do you curate? Do you select? Do you decide with any intentionality who receives your time, your loyalty, your energy, your full presence, and who does not? Or do you extend yourself broadly and indiscriminately, accepting any invitation, engaging any conversation, responding to any signal regardless of its source or its worth. The luxury mindset is not about arrogance. It is about valuing yourself accurately and then behaving in accordance with that valuation. When you become selective about your time, you are not punishing others. You are simply telling the truth. Not all things deserve equal access to you. Your energy is finite. Your best thinking, your deepest attention, your genuine care, these are not commodities to be distributed on demand. They are reserves to be deployed deliberately toward the people and pursuits that have earned them. When you inhabit this mindset fully, something changes in how others orient toward you. They begin to sense, even if they cannot name it, that engaging with you is a different kind of experience, that your attention, when you give it, is real, that your yes means something precisely because your no is also possible. You become, in the truest strategic sense, worth pursuing. The most powerful position in any negotiation is not the loudest argument. It is not the most persuasive logic. It is not even the best offer. It is the willingness to walk away from the table entirely. This principle shows up everywhere once you know how to see it. In business negotiations, the party that signals desperation, that needs the deal to close, that flinches when silence falls, almost always loses ground, because the other side can feel the need, and need is leverage transferred. In relationships, the dynamic is identical. The partner who is slightly less emotionally invested, not cold, not indifferent, but genuinely capable of surviving the loss of the relationship, holds a quiet advantage, not as a weapon, as a reality. Non-neediness is not a technique. It is a state of being, and it communicates without a single spoken word that you are not here out of desperation, but out of genuine choice. This is why walking away, truly walking away, not threatening to leave as a manipulation, is so recalibrating for others. It forces them to confront a question they may never have seriously considered. What is this actually worth to me? Most people never ask that question because they are never made to. The other person is always still there, still waiting, still available. The stakes never feel real. When you demonstrate, through action rather than words, that your presence in any situation is conditional on it meeting a certain standard. When you leave the negotiation that doesn't respect your time, exit the relationship that consistently diminishes you, decline the opportunity that demands more than it offers. You reframe your own position entirely. You are no longer a petitioner. You are not asking to be included, validated, or chosen. You are someone who is evaluating whether to stay. And that distinction, subtle as it sounds, changes everything about how you are perceived, approached, and ultimately treated. Everything we have covered in this examination points toward a single transformation, one that is simple to understand and genuinely difficult to execute, because it requires you to move against almost everything your environment has trained you to do. It requires you to raise your standards. Not aggressively, not as performance, but quietly, consistently, as a private decision that then becomes visible through your behavior, through what you accept, what you decline, what you engage with, and what you allow to pass without reaction. Most people lower their standards to maintain relationships, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace, to stay comfortable inside environments that were built to other people's specifications and have never truly fit them. And in doing so, they gradually become smaller, less defined, less real, even to themselves. The rare individual who moves in the opposite direction, who raises their standards at the risk of being misunderstood, at the cost of some relationships and some opportunities, discovers something that cannot be taught and cannot be borrowed. They discover that the act of refusing to shrink is itself transformative. That identity, at its deepest level, is not what you believe about yourself. It is what you demonstrate through repeated, costly action. Speak less than you think you should. Reveal less than feels comfortable. Give your presence only where it is genuinely valued. Hold your silence like a resource, not a void. Let others wonder about you. Let the mystery of your inner life be yours alone. Because the world does not remember those who explain themselves constantly. It does not grant lasting authority to those who chased its approval. It does not hand power to those who were always available, always accommodating, always eager to be liked. It remembers those who held something back. And in that withholding, in that careful, deliberate, sovereign refusal to give everything away, they became, in the only way that has ever truly mattered, irreplaceable. The man who masters himself needs no audience, because the audience in time always comes to him.